the people in this room, I believe, when you've elected to come to the heading of how can I get involved, are the movers and the shakers of our communities. And I love you. Thank you for doing what you feel inspired to do. And we have a task in front of us that is giant. But we can take one step at a time. We can make progress and go forward in helping do our part. So let me introduce to you the panelists that we have today. I should first introduce myself and my wife. My name's Milt, Shipp, and this is Heidi. We are the chair of the International Advisory Council for the International Center for Law and Religion Studies. And we have with us on the panel Bill Benac at the end, who is the chair of the DFW Alliance. It's the Religious Freedom Alliance Council. They have taken the ball and run with it. They will be holding the 6th annual Religious Freedom Alliance Council in the Dallas-Fort Worth area this year. He retired in 2016 as an attorney, as an international philanthropic person who's done much good throughout the world. And he works and has brought in a ringer, Hannah Smith, who has her law degree from BYU and has clerked for 2 Supreme Court justices. Then we have Jeff and Janet Nelson, who are senior fellows for the International Center for Law and Religion Studies. So we'll start with Bill and Hannah, and they will present some of their hands-on experiences that will allow you to not just be up here, but it'll take you down to the grassroots of how to go forward.
Thank you very much. This work? What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the history of how I got in this room, because...
Bill, we can't hear you very well.
Hello? Does that work? A little bit about the history of how I got in this room, and then Hannah will talk a little bit about where we hope to go after we walk out of this room. That's a big place for all of us. I have been so blessed to get to know so many of you, and I feel so grateful for what God has allowed me to get involved with in my life. Yeah, maybe part of that's good repentance from being a finance guy for so many decades. In 2016, as Milt mentioned, I retired, and with a friend of mine who's sitting in the 4th row up here, Mark Romney, we were off on a golf course one time and had the idea that we needed to do something about religious freedom in the United States of America. I was involved already with the international group here at BYU, and I'm on the executive committee there, as Milt mentions. But the notion was that the battle is on the home front, that while we're spending a lot of time, as we well should be, helping other nations figure out how the United States Constitution works, how the First Amendment works, how our freedoms have been protected here over a couple of hundred years, there's so much antipathy and so much genuine resentment in the United States of America now across religions, across politics, that what we needed to do was figure out how to deal with that. So Mark and I started a 501c3 called the DFW Alliance for Religious Freedom. In 2018, we held our first summit meeting. Those meetings have been held each year, except for the COVID year, at Southern Methodist University. Ultimately, the president of the university approached us and said, "We love the idea that we can host your meetings. Could we become a co-sponsor?" Well, of course. So they've been a great supporter of us. And over the years now. I'd just like to make a mention of how we did this, what we have accomplished in Dallas, because the value of that is that now we're trying to take that across the United States of America and into Canada. And Hannah's got some great ideas about how that can come together. So starting off in 2017, we held our first meeting there. We had 120 people attend. We were able to get some great speakers. Ken Starr and some other folks of prominence joined us, and we had an all-day meeting. In 2018, we doubled the attendance at that. We got a much nicer facility, and we reached out to people across many faith groups. We established something we called the Interfaith Advisory Council and welcomed people from all religious traditions to join us to put these meetings together. The organization we have in Dallas is not a religious organization per se. It's not sponsored by the LDS Church, although Mark and I are both members of the LDS Church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so we have on our advisory council prominent, internationally or domestically prominent leaders from the Muslim, Jewish, Baha'i, Sikh faiths, from all the faiths basically in Dallas, the legal head of the Sikh Coalition, the legal head of the Gay and Lesbian Society of the United States of America is on our board. And we have lots of folks there who might not normally all be in the same room. And we get along very well, and we talk about how do we bring religious freedom to be on a grassroots basis. This is a very down-home sort of an organization. We're trying to help educate people in local government, in local organizations, in the school systems, and in business. Those are the groups we're welcoming in, and we do this by bringing together people from all of those, and lawyers included, from all those organizations, as well as faith leaders from all the different groups that I've mentioned. And the group gets along well, and these are where these meetings come from. Starting then in 2020, we had COVID hit us, and so what we did, instead of holding a one-day event, was we held 3 one-hour events on 3 different days. We streamed the whole thing, and because we had the Chief of Chaplains for the U.S. military as one of the speakers, who brought in a lot of people from around the world, and we had Elder Suarez, who spoke from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we ended up with, at the time of the event, we had 4,000 people join us across 25 states and 10 different countries and about 20 different religions. So we started to get the message out there. Then after COVID, we decided we were going to stream these events annually. We did that the last 2 years and had both people in attendance, several hundred people in attendance, and who knows how many people online, when we held sessions that began to focus more and more and more on what do we actually do to help people in our communities understand what are the laws, what are we entitled to, how do we send out a message that you can pray in school, you can have a Bible on your desk at work, you can get along with your friends of other faiths, and that has become very successful. So that's kind of where we are right now, and we've learned an awful lot from that. In the course of our learning experience, we've also invited people to join us from across the United States. And I see a lot of friends here. They held their own version of this organization this last year or so in Phoenix and Las Vegas and Charlotte and Orlando. And we have other folks who are very interested in what we've done. So what we then were able to help provide was a significantly large endowment to help support religious freedom organizations like this across the United States. And that group has supported and hired Hannah Smith, who's a terrific professional in all of these areas where I'm just such a novice. And so what we hope to do now is see the great growth of religious freedom organizations across the United States on a grassroots basis where we can bring in and involve citizens across our communities. Hannah, with that, I'll turn it to you.
Wait, time out. Bill, so am I to understand, do these people understand that you and Hannah are resources to refer to call up, and to ask questions about how they might go forward in their respective communities?
Yes, and Hannah will explain exactly how that can happen. I am now the chairman of a group which we've developed to do this, and Hannah is the director of that organization.
Excellent.
It's great to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for choosing to come to our breakout session. I was just realizing last night as we had a dinner with all of the speakers that it was 25 years ago this fall that my husband and I came here to BYU Law School. And it's remarkable to me that it's been that long. I see one of my favorite classmates out here in the audience, Natalie. And we worked together with Cole Durham to establish the International Center for Law and Religion Studies during our time at law school. And it was such an honor to be part of the work of religious freedom as a law student. After law school, I had the honor to go back to Washington, D.C. and work with a variety of different organizations that focus on religious freedom. And Gene Shear, who is going to be here today, was a great mentor of mine in the religious liberty area. And I'm still working with him as well. But I want to kind of give you a little bit of background to how we got here. So after working at the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty for about 10 years and working on some really interesting and wonderful cases representing interfaith groups around the country, representing a variety of different religions, my husband and I moved to Dallas, Texas. And it was in about 2016 when the LDS Church asked if I would be willing to work with them on a series of roadshows. And I call them roadshows, fondly, because growing up in the church, I remember the roadshows we used to do. It wasn't those kinds of roadshows. But it was basically a religious freedom roadshow. And we started off in Dallas, Texas. And this was before we had moved back to Dallas. But some members of the General Counsel's Office of the church, Public Affairs, and me were asked to make presentations to members of the church in stake centers in 6 different cities. We started in Dallas. We went to Arizona, Las Vegas, Orange County, Sacramento, Columbus, Ohio, all over the country with different members of the Quorum of the 12 as speakers. And we basically implored members of the church everywhere to get involved and learn more about religious freedom. What does it mean for everyday members of the church like you and me to be involved in this effort to defend religious liberty for ourselves, for our neighbors, for our friends? And it was at that Dallas conference that I met someone named Bill Benac, and he was inspired from the message to go form the DFW Alliance and the DFW Summit, which he has just described to you. And I've seen from those 6 roadshows that we did a proliferation of interest among members of the church all over the country to form organizations and to hold summits, much like Bill and Mark have done. A friend of mine is out in the audience here today who decided she wanted to do something with religious freedom and youth. And so the Casters in Las Vegas have put together a really innovative nonprofit that deal with helping educate young people how to talk to people who are not of their faith. Really wonderful organization. So, it's like planting seeds, and you just hope and pray and water and make sure that they grow. And so when the center approached me earlier this year to be involved in this new effort to create a National Religious Freedom Alliance Council. I said I would love to be part of it. Our goal with this Alliance Council is to help be a resource to anyone in the country, around the country, that is interested in creating a religious freedom organization, or even just host a religious freedom summit, or bring people together in an interfaith way to talk about religious freedom and what it means to you. The emphasis that we want to make sure that you understand is we're not expecting you to create the same organization that Bill and Mark have created in Dallas. We don't expect you to, create a huge conference, but we would love to help you if you have an interest in bringing people together from multi-faith perspective to talk about religious freedom. So we are a resource. We're having a meeting next breakout with those of the members of the council that are here to discuss next steps. I just came from the first Religious Freedom Summit in Charlotte, North Carolina on June 1st, where gave a keynote at Queen's University, and then we had a wonderful multi-faith panel that spoke about religious freedom and interfaith efforts in Charlotte. Before that, we were in Las Vegas with the Egberts, who are also here in the audience, and they did a fabulous job of a one-day summit in Las Vegas at the law school there. So there are wonderful efforts that are going on around the country. We want to expand them. We want to grow this council so that we have these kinds of organizations. My goal and my hope is that it will be everywhere in all of the major metropolitan areas in the country. So if you have questions or you want to discuss this further, please feel free to reach out. It's an important aspect of our doctrine as members of the church. For those of you who are members of the LDS Church, for those of you who are not members of the LDS Church, it is an integral part of most major faith groups to be involved in protecting religious liberty for yourself and for people who are not of your faith. I'll remind you of a quote that's one of my favorites that we shared in our road shows around the country, and that's from the prophet Joseph Smith. And I'll just paraphrase basically what he said. But he said, my brethren know that I am willing to die for members of the church, but I am also willing to die for any member who's a faithful member of another denomination who are too weak to defend themselves. So, our articles of faith preach that we need to be protecting not only our own religious freedom, but also the religious freedom of others, and that is something that's integral to the doctrine of the LDS Church. So I will turn the time over to the rest of our panel, and then hopefully we'll be able to have some questions and interact with you all at the end.
Good. So Jeff and Janet Nelson, senior fellows for the center.
Okay, and give me 1 second to see if I can get this up on the screen. That's my paper. So. Yeah, but I want to do this. Okay.
Now, while she pulls this up, you may be thinking of questions. We're going to have a question and answer period at the end of this breakout session that we encourage a lot of participation and good questions. So be thinking of what you would like to discuss.
How do I do it so it doesn't show this whole screen? I just want to do this presentation. Okay. How to start? Yes. Okay. No, that's not the. Okay, how do I go back? That's not the first slide, so. Okay, thanks. Sorry. I didn't know I'd have to talk and do tech at the same time. So I'm going to talk more about how to start getting involved if you're not doing anything, okay? So do I have to take it like this? Okay. Yeah. Be a movie star. No, it's okay.
That's okay.
Most of my adult life was spent raising our 4 children. My short but amazing career was teaching mathematics in grades 7 through 12. I was raised in a home that exposed me to people whose beliefs, cultures, and religions were different than mine own. As a young child, I was able to see the differences between these people and myself and recognize that I could learn from them. As I got older, I enjoyed being with people who were not exactly like me. It made life interesting. I would like to share some experiences with you that illustrate how I've been able to expand my circle of association to be more pluralistic through interfaith interaction and service. Developing meaningful relationships is an important initial step that I believe anyone could take to be more involved in freedom of religion or belief, or FORB. At some point, Jeff and I were introduced to and quickly became friends with James Massa, a Catholic priest who lived near us in Brooklyn. We had dinners and discussions about how our two communities could work together on many fronts, including having our youths come together for community service projects. Many beautiful and spiritual experiences took place between us. When Pope Francis announced that he would be visiting New York in 2015, the now Bishop Massa informed us that 4 local leaders from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would be invited to attend the Prayer for Peace event to be held in the 9/11 Memorial Museum in Lower Manhattan, and we were to be 2 of those 4. Before the actual prayer service, Jeff and I walked around looking for people to talk to. I saw 4 Muslim women wearing full covering clothing and hijabs. I went up and talked to them. I mentioned how beautiful I thought they were. One said to me, "I feel empowered when I walk into a room because everyone knows that I am a woman of faith." My response was that I too was a woman of faith, but the religious clothing that I wore was worn so as not to be seen. As I left this conversation, I pondered, how could I better show the world that I too am a woman of faith? This meeting was a gathering of about 500 local religious leaders. Prayers were offered by an imam, a rabbi, an Orthodox Christian, an evangelical pastor, a Buddhist monk, a Sikh, and a Hindu. When we left that meeting, we felt that we were part of a large community of faith in New York City. I recorded in my journal, "Today I felt so strongly that God is the Father of all. He created us and gave us agency to choose how we worship and to respect that in others. It was so clear to me that what we call the light of Christ was in all those leaders today. We were brothers and sisters with a common Heavenly Father. It's a good thing to remember and often be reminded of." I shook hands with Pope Francis today. That won't ever happen again. Jeff and I raised our family in Brooklyn, New York, which we still call home. For our peers and family, this was the road not taken. Yet for us, this decision to spend our life in Brooklyn has made all the difference. We were exposed and introduced to and eventually became part of a pluralistic environment and neighborhood like no other. We had many co-workers and neighbors who eventually became our friends, and I would like to mention a few. Sheila, an observant Jewish co-worker who sacrificed income to stay home and raise her 2 sons before going back to work. We had many conversations about how much we women of faith had in common. How do we show respect to aging parents for whom we are becoming the parents? How do we show love and respect to children who are no longer following the faith tradition of their parents? Wendy, an Orthodox Jewish neighbor, taught me much about keeping the Sabbath day holy. Tanya, a Lutheran neighbor, coordinated all service efforts on our block. Whether one had a stroke, surgery, or babies, Tanya would arrange for meals, dog walking, car moving, and more. Mary and Arnold, our next-door neighbors, let us, a family of 6, move into their bottom floor of their home for the summer while we renovated ours. We entered as neighbors and left as dear friends. 10 years later, Arnold wrote of this experience in his political blog, Defending Our Faith, when Mitt Romney was running for office. It was entitled, "I have a confession to make. I spent 2 months living with a cult family." Each year, the youth of our church participate in an interfaith service project, planting the flower beds in the New York Congregational Nursing Home. I was often involved, but one year I was not and just sent my children. The next day, another of my Lutheran neighbors, Beth, mentioned that she and her boys had also been at the service project and how nice it was for her children to work alongside my children serving others. My younger son attended LaGuardia High School, a well-known arts school in Manhattan. He joined the soccer team. Crass language and a screaming captain made for a bad experience. The next year, he joined the gymnastics team. He came home one day and excitedly said, "Mom, Adam," who was a boy on the team, "he goes to church every week and he reads the Bible." It turns out Adam was Catholic. For the next 3 years, Sam thrived on a team built by a captain who was an evangelical Christian who set an example of using no foul language and treating team members with respect. My last and favorite story of my pluralistic life in Brooklyn involves our Jewish neighbors, David and Laura Kasten. My holiday tradition was to give homemade applesauce to my friends and neighbors in December. One night, I delivered the Kastens' applesauce and to my surprise, it was the first night of Hanukkah. For those who don't know, latkes, or potato pancakes with applesauce, are an integral part of many Hanukkah traditions. They were so grateful that I, a Christian, would make an effort to remember them that on Easter they brought me flowers and a beautiful card. A few years later, just before Hanukkah, Laura mentioned to David that they were applesauce, to which he replied, "No worries, Janet will provide." What do these experiences have to do with getting involved with religious freedom efforts? Serving and interacting with others outside my own faith tradition and often outside my own comfort zone has provided me and my family with rich experiences and opportunities to reflect on the goodness of people and what they add to our lives. As we have formed meaningful relationships, freedom of religion or belief has taken on a whole new dimension. We no longer look inward and ask, how do we protect our own religious freedoms? But we look outward and ask, how do we protect others' religious freedoms? The result is we would go to greater lengths to protect the beliefs of all our friends and neighbors, believers and non-believers, and this leads to action and involvement. Thank you. Okay, give me a minute to get this.
How can I get involved? Janet has highlighted and suggested the importance of interfaith interaction or service and expanding our circle of association to be more pluralistic. As we think of getting involved in promoting and defending freedom of religion or belief at any level, may I suggest that at the core of that involvement are relationships. The level of our success for any of us to better the world through FORB. By the way, I guess I'll just note, FORB is probably an expression that we use more because we spent most of our time dealing with these issues in Europe, and freedom of religion or belief is the way we talk about religious freedom or freedom of religion or for religious liberty. So just expect to hear FORB when you hear Janet and me speak of these things. But the level of success for any of us to better the world through FORB, I think, will be predicated on the respect, and some would use the word love, within those relationships, and the diversity of the people to whom we extend that respect or love, whether in our home, neighborhood, community, country, or world. Years ago, I gave a presentation in a very small conference in one of the many back rooms of the UN in New York, in which I used the family as a microcosm of FORB work and asked if our children or grandchildren or other family members have different beliefs or worldviews, do we stop respecting or loving them? I think we lose the ability to better the world through FORB involvement if our attitudes towards people of different faith traditions or worldviews is, at best, toleration. Our focus, or one focus that Janet and I have, is the younger generation. We observed over the years that many of the FORB events are attended or dominated by folks with gray hair, and I don't ask you to look around right now. Although each of you, who are parents and grandparents, could have invited your children or grandchildren to this event, we don't see many of that generation. We are, however, aware of efforts that are being made to make this event better speak to the younger generation, and we think that their participation will enrich us all. Lately, Janet and I, with input from many, young and old, throughout the world, have outlined a concept and activity that we believe would promote FORB. We call it Heal the World events. Although our stated focus for Heal the World events is the younger generations, the principles, I think, apply to everyone. The idea arose out of the experience with Pope Francis that Janet shared, where our eyes were open to the fact that we are part of a larger community of faith beyond our own faith tradition. And we began to see the good that is or could be done and the enriching relationships that are or could be developed if and when we linked arm in service with that larger community. Heal the World events has 3 primary objectives, each of which will, we think, make the world better. First, provide meaningful service to the community. Second, learn of the importance of freedom of religion or belief and human dignity for everyone, everywhere. And third, learn about the faith traditions and worldviews of others to develop appreciation and respect, or love, for our proverbial neighbors. How are these objectives met? First, event participants from diverse religious and belief traditions and worldviews organize and carry out interfaith community service, focusing on the needs of the community that are of interest to them. Second, on the same day as the interfaith community service, the participants will have a short meeting, no longer than 45 minutes, where one or more of the following could or should happen. Selected participants could provide information about their faith or belief traditions for greater understanding. Second, one or more people could present about the importance of freedom of religion or belief in their community and the world. And thirdly, participants could share briefly their positive experiences of serving with others. Then, repeat often. If relationships are to be developed and objectives achieved, we think monthly events are the goal. One-offs or annual events are not sufficient in our opinion. As mentioned, our focus for Heal the World events is for young people around the ages of 12 to 30, organized in age groups. But the idea is available for all. A few other thoughts. 1, keep it simple. Second, presentations about faith or belief traditions could include descriptions of such traditions' teachings that support freedom of religion or belief and human dignity for everyone, everywhere. Third, ensure the safety of those participants. Fourth, ensure that the events are not, and I underline not, used as a proselyting tool by or for any faith, belief tradition, or worldview. Consider taking advantage of existing organizations, groups, relationships to help organize and carry out Heal the World events, focusing on organizations and relationships that value service, freedom of religion or belief, and human dignity for everyone, everywhere. And lastly, Heal the World events, the concept, is not a program of or idea of any faith tradition, nor of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies, or BYU, or the Wheatley Center. And any such events must not be presented, advertised, or organized as such. We can talk about that if you wish later. We share the concept of Heal the World events with you for various reasons. First, if you like the idea, you might seek to organize a Heal the World event or invite young people to do so. And we have a one-page instruction sheet. If you're interested, we could give to you. Second, we think the concept underscores vital principles associated with getting involved with freedom of religion or belief, especially building meaningful relationships with people of other faiths. And third, we think it may be a small example of what any one of us could do or think of to become involved with FORB. And I note that Janet and I are still developing this idea or concept of Heal the World events. But I would suggest, no matter what each of us does, keep it simple. Focusing on building relationships with people of different faith traditions. That, I believe, is at the core of becoming involved in promoting and defending freedom of religion.
Excellent. Now we have at the core, and we've traveled, we've seen conferences, we've seen small gatherings, large gatherings, but at the core of all of these that are effective are the relationships. And the Nelsons talked about that, Bill and Hannah have talked about that. It's relationships. And so whatever groundwork, whatever interaction that you can have to form real, genuine relationships with those that you would like to have be involved and share that experience with and have that be a team effort, I think that's the key. So now let's open it up for your questions. We've got a good 20 minutes. We have roaming microphones. If you want to just stand where you are, raise your hand, and we'll have microphones brought to you.
Annalise, while you are standing, would you please tell everyone what your organization is about and what you guys do in Las Vegas? Thank you.
I would love to. So excited to do that. I'm going to face this way then. Is that okay?
Sure.
So my name is Annalise Castor. I was in the hospital when Hannah came and presented her roadshow in Las Vegas, but I heard all about, I was having a baby. But I asked everybody about it, and we had a bunch of conferences with wonderful, smart people. And in the end, we asked the teenagers, and we said, what does religious liberty mean to you? And they came up with the idea of free to express. And they teach people how to disagree appropriately with candy. And that's their whole spiel of how they feel like it's the best way to present religious liberties. We both like sugar, you like Starburst, I like chocolate, we can still be friends. So that's my free to express. If anyone wants to know more, I'd love to talk to you about it. My question for you guys, though, is as someone who's started a grassroots organization about religious liberty, I would love to find a way, a website, a social media group, something to be connected and hear from other people like the Nelsons. That is so cool. I love what you're doing. But I would love to know if there's more people or a place where we can go to be inspired by more ideas.
So I'm glad you raised that. We actually are building out a part of the DFW Summit's website. We are adding a page onto that website that's going to bring together a lot of resources for people, like-minded organizations, places that you can go to learn more, ideas of what you can do to get involved. So that is in the works currently. We just had a conversation about it a couple weeks ago. So stay tuned on that, but it will be really great. So.
And Hannah, say again the name of the website.
Do you want to tell?
Yeah, well, there's something out there right now called DFWReligiousFreedom.org. That's our existing website. But let me take this there'll be additional pages on that, but let me take it a step further. With the organization that Hannah was describing here, the Religious Freedom Alliance Council, our idea is we extend the invitation to you right now to join that group. This is a group that will be meeting together verbally or via Zoom. How often? Hannah, we're talking about every quarter or more often than not, add as needed. And what we believe we can do based on the relationships we have right now is to help you understand how to organize organizations like this, how to gain speakers, how to set up locations, what the logistics need to be, how you reach out to your multi-faith communities where you live. So this is a very action-oriented organization that we've now established, and we invite you to be a part of that. To the extent you'd like to come to Dallas, in October. On October 12th, we have our next summit meeting in Dallas. But this is just an example of what can be done. And we invite you to just join us and help us have better ideas. And let's share our relationships, the people we know, and how we can get this done for Grassroots America. We all live in Grassroots America. And that's where we're trying to take this alliance idea.
Maybe just one other thought on that. I think the more pathways to the world that you can find to make that possible. We spoke about a year ago with a religious leader who said, you know, when I hear the idea that you've just talked about, I think of a dandelion. And if we can just blow on that dandelion and allow the seeds to be spread, and I think part of it is finding those paths. We could talk about various things that we think we are on the cusp of having opportunities to blow that dandelion and having the seeds go out, but it's necessary. And in addition to whatever may be happening in the alliances, to find those other, I don't know, we've heard an expression of networks, to get involved in those network of networks that allow you to blow that dandelion and have the seeds spread, and then they will grow in places we would have never thought of.
That's an excellent analogy.
So can I just add one more thing? For those of you who are interested, it's not on the program, but I would like to extend to you the invitation for anyone here who'd like to talk more about establishing their own grassroots organization where you live. We are going to be meeting as an alliance during the next breakout session that I believe starts at 11:20. So write down, it's going to be in conference room 2269, and we're just going to meet as an alliance council and with some other friends from the IEC and any of you who would like to be there to just talk about steps going forward.
Good.
So the room number again is 2269.
You can see that what Bill and Hannah have is not only something that is based in Dallas-Fort Worth area, but an organization that is open to help consult and help you go further in your own organization. So they have two functions, and that second aspect is at this point, it's a North America invitation. Any groups throughout North America who would like to have that consultation, that help, the benefit of their experience, that's available through them. Okay, good question. Another question?
Thank you very much. I'm David Peterson. My wife and I are visiting from Washington, D.C. I'm standing to add an exclamation point to what you've been saying. This is truly important work. Hannah and John Smith were dear friends of ours when we all lived, and we still do live in the Washington, D.C. area. But she knows how much I loved George Washington because I was president of the Mount Vernon, Virginia stake. And I felt I wanted to read into the record some motivational statements, particularly one brief excerpt from George Washington's farewell address. Tell me if this doesn't ring true today. Quote, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the attribute of patriotism who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and to cherish them. Let it simply be asked, where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of moral and religious obligation desert the oaths which are the instruments of investigation in courts of justice?" I remind us all and ask the question, if, in your view of grassroots, if we are doing enough to quote the founders who had strong opinions about religion and morality and the virtues that they sacrificed everything to create in the United States Constitution and in our beloved republic. Thank you.
Wow, that's a
We
great
love
question.
you. We love you, President and Sister Peterson. We had the privilege of living in the same stake as the Petersons, and my husband and I served in the young single adult bishopric with them. And they served as mission president in Hungary and are wonderful examples of service in the Lord's kingdom. So thank you both for being here today. So I think your point is very well taken, President Peterson. I think, the founders really understood the idea of factions. And if you read, the Federalist Papers, you'll see that they understood that there were going to be a lot of different factions in this republic, and that each one of these factions was going to have their own agenda and their own political idea of what they wanted to gain. And they said the whole purpose of the American experiment, the American system of government, was to bring together people who were wildly different, who had wildly different ideas, and to help them learn how to live together in what we know as principled pluralism. And I think that's one of the most important ideas that we can take in our grassroots efforts, is to help educate others about this idea of America, the idea of principled pluralism, the idea that we are unique in the world, being a place where people come to us with all different cultures and backgrounds and religions, and yet we have a system set up to help us be successful in living together peaceably and in harmony. And I think that the Heal the World, activities that you've heard about, and some of these interfaith meetings that we've discussed today are, I think, exactly what the founders had in mind, as far as bringing people together to forge a strong, principled pluralism. I'm really dismayed at what I'm seeing right now in our national and local politics. I've seen up close and personal a sort of winner-takes-all approach to local governance, to those who think that if we are in the majority, then we will get what we want, and too bad if you're in the minority. And I don't think that that's the message that we want to be sending as we go out and do our work in these religious freedom opportunities that we have. We want to be approaching it as people of peace and goodwill and harmony, and bringing people together of lots of different backgrounds and learning from each other and how we can live together. So thank you for bringing up the founders. I think it's really important to go back to first principles, and that's something that Justice Thomas always taught us to do. What are the first principles here? What are we guided by? And I think that the founders really understood that America is a place for everyone.
We have in that dialogue the opportunity to express love to those around us. And in a community, in a brotherhood of true understanding of our nature, our divine nature as brothers and sisters of a common God. And when we start there, then they feel that love, and we can jointly go forward. And if we pull from the founding fathers, if we pull from other leaders throughout the world, throughout time, who express that common fundamental belief, then we're starting on the right principle. Great question. Thank you very much. Next question, please.
Hi, I'm Nanette Galbraith from BYU, Idaho, and I teach a religious freedom course. And the frustration of my students coming out of that course is, what can we do? They're young, they're poor, they don't have a lot of time. They're setting up their professions, but they want to advocate and do something. What can I tell them to do?
So thank you so much, and thank you for teaching a course on non-religion. That's awesome. So the things that we like to tell young people to do is to get involved on social media. I think a lot of important work can be done in changing minds and changing hearts when people effectively engage in social media. And I think that our young people are so adept at that it's a really important avenue for them to be engaged in. Part of the website that we're going to build out is going to have some references to social media opportunities in that regard. So I would start there. I would also start with branching out in their faith friendships. I mean, I would encourage them to make friends with people of other faiths. I would encourage them to have opportunities to meet together with them and find out what's troubling their friends of other faiths. When we were in Las Vegas, I challenged the people who were on my panel to come with concrete examples of how their faith community is being threatened right now. Because it's nice to talk about generalities of, coming together and learning about each other, but what is it that you are faced with as a challenge right now that we can help you overcome? And the Jewish rabbi who came to the Las Vegas conference talked about a very troubling reality for them, and that is that a lot of homeowners associations were not allowing mezuzahs to be on the lintels of homes. And so Jewish people were being denied the opportunity of one of the tenets of their faith of having mezuzah on their home. And so there was legislation that's going through the Las Vegas legislature right now to restrict homeowners associations from prohibiting that. But I would just encourage them to ask, what are you guys facing? Like, what is challenging for you? Something that we heard in Charlotte on June 1st was, from the Jewish rabbi, was how the young people that she ministers to in her synagogue, they're really feeling a lot of anti-Semitism right now that is very prevalent in their high schools, and how that is negatively affecting them, and also how they're sort of just taking it for granted, that it's just sort of something that's becoming expected. So I would encourage them to ask the hard questions. Like, what is it that you are facing that is difficult for your faith community, and how can we help you? So I think engaging effectively online, being examples of positive and constructive communication on religious freedom issues, educating yourself, teaming up with like-minded organizations that are local for you, and if they don't exist, create them. And then again, just building those relationships and asking the hard questions, and then being willing to actually be part of the solution.
Good. Thank you. Here's a question right here. Now, this is Mark Romney, who's a partner with Bill Benac in establishing the DFW Alliance.
Yes. So in answer to your question, what can the young people do? One of the things I would suggest that they do, and if there are any of you out there that don't feel like you have the interfaith connections that you think that you would like to have to start something, or to bring a group together to start talking about it, in every locality, I don't care where you are, whatever religion you are, there are going to be people of your faith that are involved in civic organizations and know a broad range of people of different faiths. And they're probably good friends with them in either social or business aspects. But I would, as a young person coming out of college, what I would want to do, and they won't do it because they're afraid unless you help them do it, is to seek out a mentor. Seek out somebody in the community that is in their religious community that knows a lot of people. And you can do that too. Everywhere you live, if you've got an interest in doing something like a religious alliance, there's going to be people in the ambit of the church or whatever faith you are, that are interconnected with various people. Get to know them, pick their brain, pick up their Rolodex. I mean, help get those contacts, and then get it started by doing that. I mean, that's essentially how Bill and I got going. We each had our different Rolodex of different people in the community, and we brought those together and say, okay, what can we do with these people that we know? And it doesn't have to be formal, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but there's going to be somebody out there that has that knowledge, and you can bring the desire to form some sort of a religious freedom group and combine it with that core knowledge of religious people in the community, And that's a good start. And that's how all of these groups start somehow.
Excellent, excellent comment. You know, we have probably one last question that we can entertain.
Just quickly with social media, I think that because that is such a minefield, and if they have a bad experience with that, it could actually do more harm than good. I think it would be very good if you could identify some training for social media or some approach, some guidance with language and emotions and proper channels. If you could make available at some point some guidance for young people and actually people of every age who want to do something constructive with religious freedom, but to really be educated as to how to approach things in social media, that would be great.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And during the roadshows that we did for the church, the Public Affairs Department actually came up with a website on religious freedom that addressed some of those issues. So if you go onto the LDS Church's website, there should be those pages still there that talk about how to engage constructively in communications, including the social media aspect. So if you go to that on the LDS Church website, I think you'll find what you're looking for. Thank you for that comment.
All right.
Can I just make one other comment to the woman who taught at BYU Idaho? Most universities have interfaith organizations, and if there is not one there, my guess is there are clubs that, I would hope there's not just a Christian club, but there might be a Jewish club or a Muslim club that you could go to those and say, hey, should we form an interfaith organization? And if your university doesn't have it, find another university that does have one and model it, because most of the universities that we've looked into have something, and that's a really great place to start.
I would just add to, in my experience dealing with pre-existing interfaith organizations, they often have an agenda that's very different from ours. And so my new term that I am using as we do these alliance events around the country is multi-faith. I call them multi-faith because it means that a lot of different faiths are represented, but interfaith often has a connotation of ecumenical and sort of compromising doctrine to get along. And we're not in the arena of compromising our doctrine. We're in the arena of just wanting to build relationships and building trusting environments to have constructive dialogue. So I would just caution you about pre-existing interfaith organizations may have an agenda that doesn't entirely match ours. So if you want to build your own, build a multi-faith organization, that would be great.
Good, thank you. Well, the key word in that last dialogue, I think, was faith. Multi-faith. We come from a foundation of faith with our friends and our neighbors. As we put our arms around each other, my encouragement, and I think I speak for all of the panel today, is to form genuine relationships based on that faith in God. Trust Him, and He will lead us as we try to encourage and link our arms with our brothers and sisters. May we all have that kind of blessing in our lives. Thank you for all of the action. Faith and action go together. Thank you very much.